You just hit play on 10-Minute Tech Talks, business insights and growth hacks for the time-crunched entrepreneur. I'm your host, Jonathan Kirsting. I'm with the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and I have nearly 3 decades telling the stories of Pittsburgh's most successful tech companies and the women and men behind them. We bring you their knowledge, insights, and inspiration to help your company succeed in 10 minutes. Simple as that. So have you ever felt trapped in a business that no longer ignites your passion? In this episode of 10-Minute Tech Talks, I'm welcoming Chris Brisson, founder of Sales Message, and he reveals how entrepreneurs can courageously pivot from a stagnant business to a thriving, purpose-driven venture. In this episode, Chris candidly details how to recognize when your current business model isn't serving your vision. You can discover the power of radical transparency in communicating your business transition and understand how personal fulfillment can drive your entrepreneurial success. Keep listening to transform your entrepreneurial journey and unlock the courage to reinvent your business. Chris did it, and he's going to show you how. Let's welcome him to the show right now. Chris, welcome to 10-Minute Tech Talks. We're so glad to have you here in the Huntington Bank studios. At the Tech Council, our mission is to help our tech companies succeed, right? And success takes many turns along the way, which is why I'm really excited to talk to you today and just learn about your story and how you can inspire our listeners out there. So Chris, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Jonathan, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So first and foremost, just give us your quick little elevator pitch about who Chris Brisson is, and of course, your company that's working very well now, Sales Message.
Yeah, I got started really young. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was like 19, accidentally fell into entrepreneurship, really fell in love with creating products and leaned into more on the software side. So a lot of evolution to get there, but started selling wheels and tires on eBay. And then I learned copywriting and websites and development and internet marketing, and then fell in love with software. Here we are, long time later. But yeah.
Very cool. I always love it talking to folks who've always had the entrepreneurial thing since day one, because you got this special bug in you that keeps you going, especially when you find yourself burned out, broke, and then back again. I appreciate the candor. I think one of the hardest things for me to do hosting podcasts is getting people to talk just honestly about what didn't work sometimes with a company. I know, especially in Pittsburgh, like we still have a culture of people just want to succeed. And of course we all do, but we haven't embraced failure as much as I think we should, because you only learn through failure, which is of course easier said than done when my money's modeled. A lot of time. It seems to be a wonderful way for us to talk about that. So maybe walk us through this a little bit. What happened? This was the company before you had a Sales Message. Give us a little background and what you found going on, and then we'll start talking about how you came out of this.
Yeah. So I started this company called Call Loop. Actually, it still exists today, back in 2009. And the idea with that was I wanted a way to automate like automated phone calls, right? And just like you could do an email autoresponder, I wanted to do voice. So that was the idea, right? Fast forward 2015, after running this for 5 years, it wasn't growing, it wasn't dying. It was what I call a zombie startup, a zombie company. And things are breaking, the tech was bad. And I really wanted to create something more impactful. And it's Monday morning and I walk into my office and I said, I can't do this anymore.
Really?
And so
Not happening.
Yeah, not happening. And so, just had this emotional sort of process to go through where I was like, this is not what I want. And that day I wrote what came to be this 3-part blog series called The Death of Call Loop. And so you imagine we have about 34,000 people on our email list. And as I'm writing this whole story, I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to tell people that I don't want to do this? I want to do something better. And I sent this out. And as you can imagine, you click the send button and then all of a sudden you get the feedback. And so this went into the whole story of how I created a business I secretly despised. And not that I hated the business, but it wasn't what I really set out to build. And so I was shackled with sort of the constraints of the technology and the product. And so rather than continue on that path, which is very depressing, it wasn't like Wasn't a lot of fun at that time. I said, you know what? I really got to create something new and powerful. And so through that series, the last post was follow my journey as I reinvent Call Loop from the ground up on what I'm calling the second chance startup. And so that was this sort of idea of, hey, I'm going to reinvent it and just do things differently. Knowing what I know now, man, I know a lot. What would I do differently if I started all over? And so that sort of set the idea off. About a year, we created this other product. We didn't really reinvent Call Loop, but about 8 months, 6 months into that process of this other company, this other software company, I'm like, you know what? Let me go back to that. What would I do if I could reinvent text messaging and calling, and sales message came from that? Really, it was realizing that I had so much more that I was capable of. And I really wanted to build a product that people loved. And that was not the horse. And so we started all over. And sales message today is a conversational texting platform, calling platform. It's one of the most popular apps on HubSpot's ecosystem. So if you use HubSpot, you would use something like sales message for texting, and it's grown from that. But it all came back to that decision, 10 years ago that I wanted to do something different. Yeah.
I've never heard about someone doing what you have just done here. I think this requires an incredible amount of self-awareness, right? To basically realize, because I know a lot of folks when they're building companies, I've seen this firsthand in my own family, where you get these blinders on and you're just chasing this one idea. And even if it's making you miserable, you still chase it, right? And but you found yourself doing that, but then you said, wait a second, I can't live like this. So you're able to separate yourself from that. So I think as an entrepreneur, being aware and realizing that just because you started this doesn't mean you can't change it halfway down the road, which is what you did. Yeah. Success. What was the toughest part? Obviously, the toughest part was just hitting send on that first email, and then publicly just saying this to folks, and then having them actually inviting them to watch you do this, because you get pressure. But what was the hardest part after that, and saying that you're going to reinvent this, come up with something else that you can really love and get behind as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, like realizing that it was possible. It really was just that decision. And when I went to go and reinvent it, I talked to the developer and I'm like, how long do you think it's going to take? He said about 1.5 2 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, wrong answer. And so that's where I shifted it, got away from it. But I went back to that idea because 1.5 years later, Call Loop was still generating revenue. It was still a business. And I was like, man, while I'm trying to chase something else that I didn't actually want to do, it was this audio conferencing product. I was like, let me do it better. Let me really take that on. And in reality, it was for me to document the whole journey, but I got scared. I got scared of, whoa, now I actually have to do this. And more importantly, what if I don't succeed?
Of course.
That was the biggest thing. And I look back on that time, but it was just me wanting to really create something that was powerful, not just a product out there that generated revenue, but something that could really change businesses. And so, because I wanted it. And so just that motion of creating something people wanted, it was cathartic. That was the process.
I like it. No, that is very cool. I'm just curious, to make a big move like that, what was your support system? Do you have some mentors, friends, family? What was there to give you that guidance to anchor you while making such a big move?
Yeah. One, my wife, prior to doing all of this, I was just depressed. I wasn't happy. My wife could see it. I didn't like doing it. Didn't like the business because it was just breaking all the time. And so my wife was my number one supporter. And then a friend of mine at the time, I went through this sort of just more internal transformation. I don't know if you call it a midlife crisis, but I was like, man, I got to do something different. I had some great mentors at the time. My friend Trevor, my friend Rich Shepard at Strategic Profits. So I had some really great people that helped guide that. And yeah, it was the best decision I ever made. But at the time, it sucked because people were ruthless. I left comments open. People were mad. Some people thought it was the best thing ever.
Okay.
I didn't care. It was what I needed, not what anybody else. I didn't need approval.
What was the nastiest comment somebody left?
Funny enough, one of the comments came from a guy that it's a $200 million company. I was like, wow, he said something mean, this will never work. This type of marketing is horrible, blah, blah, blah. And it hurt me because I'm like, wow, this is someone I really truly respected. So even 10 years later, I
you still remember that one, man. That one might have
I still remember that one. Yeah.
I tell you what, Chris, I just appreciate your candor and your insight on this. I think this has been so valuable for us to all learn as we're going through life. I think if you're building a company or not, even if you're just working a job and you find yourself not happy with it, you can do something about it. I think this has been very helpful for our listeners. And I'm so glad
Yeah.
we got to connect and talk about this. And we have links, of course, to Sales Message. So people want to check that out and see what you're doing with that. That's, of course, in the description. And just so glad we got to connect up on this because, like I said, we love arming our listeners and our members at the Tech Council with inspiration, insight, and knowledge so they can build a better company and just succeed. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So thank you
Yeah.
for stepping up here with our 10-minute Tech Talks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah. And you can reinvent yourself. So there is a path forward.
Love it. That's the great way to end that right now. And if you want more content like this, we're bringing you inspiration, insight, know-how at least once a week. Sometimes we get super, I don't know, like we had too much sugar in coffee. We'll do it 2 or 3 times, but at least once a week. Just follow us. We absolutely love it. In case you forgot, this is Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council and Tech 5 Radio.